And now we go over to Montreal, and I would like to welcome Mark Aruja at the podium. And Mark is from Unmanned Systems Canada, so you're not only responsible for unmanned systems in the air, but on the ground, on the waters. And we see you getting ready. Hello, Mark.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So the next 15 minutes are yours.
Great, so thank you very much. Just get the slides up. Thank you very much, Matthias, and all the organizers of this event. My name is Mark Aruja. I represent Unmanned Systems Canada, which is a national not-for-profit association which represents the unmanned systems industry in Canada, and I'll talk about our really core activities in the UAS industry and why this forum is of particular I think relevance for both Germans and Canadians who are interested in this activity. So if we go to the next slide, I guess this is for our German colleagues to move forward. I'm going to leave you with two very broad themes here today. And the first is that in the world of unmanned aerial systems, Canada is a place where I would suggest if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. And what I mean by that is, when you come from Germany to Montreal and you fly over and you get over somewhere near Goose Bay, Labrador, if you fly at nighttime on a clear night, there are no lights between Goose Bay and Montreal. And that's because there's no people there. But there's an enormous opportunity to do the things that are happening in the mining sector and many, many other things where new business models, new opportunities to drive cost using UAS system provides an enormous opportunity. So the literally hundreds of thousands of kilometers of linear infrastructure, demanding environmental conditions. So the first theme is, if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. And the second theme is, this is about new actors, new players, and new investors. And so I'm delighted that Airbus led here because when you look at their A3 project, it is a disruptor within Airbus. Boeing and Lockheed didn't see Elon Musk and SpaceX coming. They didn't see where this comes from. And those in the UAS industry, I think, need to understand, and particularly I would say for Canadians, our governments need to understand that this is not actually the aerospace industry. To understand that you need to have a different perspective. May have been the case 15 or 10 years ago even, that this was really aerospace driven. It no longer is. And so when you have government organizations, particularly where the UAS sector is within the aerospace department, if you will, it becomes very difficult to understand what's actually happening in the industry. So I will start to move more quickly through these slides. So those are the two key themes. Next slide, please. So this is really the mission and goals of our organization. We work to represent the industry. We're 15 years old. And here are some of the association activities. Now, firstly, there's a typo on there that you will see. I failed to edit this properly. But there's probably, in the UAS concern, the first, probably and foremost role that we've had is since 2007, we have co-chaired the industry government working group dealing with UAS regulations. So we're now 11 years into that process. It's a great structure we have in Canada to work collaboratively with government. And so that's a key role we've played in that. We also run the only national conference. We just finished one 2 weeks ago. We had over 230 B2B sessions that were organized in that, 70 presenters. And perhaps, Matthias, we could take a look at perhaps a follow-up event next year in Vancouver a year from now, perhaps to then take a follow-up from this particular event today. And now you will see my typo because I have last year's Edmonton event there. So perhaps Vancouver next year might be something to work on. And the conference we just finished, for instance, the Vahana project from Airbus was presented there as, again, one of these innovators within the aerospace industry that sees where the disruptive possibilities are. And so there's both a defensive play on the aerospace industry side, but there's also the resources that come to play with the depth of expertise a large organization like that has. So I just want to put a little bit of history now to the German-Canadian relationship. Here in Montreal, Canadair developed a autonomous surveillance drone, and it was operated by the German and the French militaries for decades. That was the CL-89, the second generation was the 289, tremendously successful system both militarily and commercially, but it served to highlight that there was probably the largest non-US program in the world was actually a German-French-Canadian relationship. Dornier was the industrial partner in Germany on this, and it was only retired in 2010. Canada actually didn't buy into that. That's part of the Canadian challenge of a lack of defense procurement and development, but those were early days, great success. On the right-hand side, Canadair Bombardier, as it became known, went on to develop a next generation, fabulous technology. But the challenge with that was, and I had the privilege of actually operating that system at one time, it was too early for the market, and it came out of an industry where the cost structure could not satisfy the commercial market, but tremendous technology that was in that vertical takeoff peanut system. And which takes us to 2006, the very first commercial UAS operations in Canada. This was taken out of Newfoundland by a company that provided surveillance support for the offshore oil industry. These were large offshore rigs. And this is Iceberg Alley, as it's known, these massive icebergs. And they used UAVs to go and surveil that. The business case was pretty obvious. You have to move that rig because you cannot get an iceberg out of the way. It's $1 million a day. So the business case was there. But they couldn't grow that business. And at that point, we sat down with the regulator and said, why can't we grow the business? And that's now 10 years of work to figure out how do we move forward. So that is really the start of commercial operations in Canada. So the next slide. Just a little bit of quick history. These slides, take them away and read them later. But some say, as seen on Dragonwood, that in 1999 he developed the first commercial viable quadcopter, which is today everywhere, and he sold thousands of those. And so that's almost 20 years ago now, and Dragonfly is a story of great success out of Western Canada. So the commercial sector that started to develop these very small technologies reaches back to that time. Certainly the defense world used UAVs through the 12 years we're in Afghanistan, off north the coast of Africa, Somalia, and so forth. So whereas defense didn't do a lot of procurement per se, and it's fairly quiet right now, there's some significant things that they were able to help Canadian industry, and that is that two of the major programs use contractor services for their support, both at sea and in Afghanistan. And that knowledge and expertise, particularly beyond visual line of sight operations, has now migrated or is migrating into industry. So there's a tremendous transfer of knowledge. And so even though there is not a lot of UAS operations in our Defense Department today, that actually expertise is migrating into the commercial sector. So here's some pictures on some innovation. Micropilot, been around almost 20 years now, perhaps the world leader in small autopilots. And interesting things like energy orb with fuel cells. I believe they claim to have some records with fuel cell technology, particularly under contract with the French Air Force. And a lot of these hybrid systems now being developed for very long range infrastructure, modern surveillance. Many don't know that most of the Western world special forces use the Canadian UAV for cargo delivery. This is in the order of thousands of pounds. They don't advertise a lot because their customers are typically not ones that run websites to advertise what they do. But there's a lot of things happening, and this is a real opportunity to network and find out who these folks are. So I just want to talk a bit about the state of the industry today. This curve represents the approval rate of applications to Transport Canada to get a certificate to operate in visual line of sight. So it's anticipated that this year it'll be close to 7,000. Transport Canada will speak to that later perhaps. But this is proportional to the growth of the industry and the experience that comes with that. But it is visual line of sight. So where we are right now is we estimate there's 1,000 companies in the Canadian UAS sector. 70% are in the service delivery business. We trained 2,300 commercial UAV pilots last year to the commercial standard prescribed by Transport Canada. And critically, the next step in the growth is beyond visual line of sight. You can only do so much in visual line of sight here until you've got to get on your snowmobile or in your canoe and move somewhere. So we need to be able to scale to do thousands of kilometers of infrastructure, millions of hectares of agricultural space and so forth. You can go over this. This really just encapsulates what I just said, but an awful lot of these are small businesses. On the right-hand side graph, some of the large businesses are in fact companies that have the UAS tool embedded within their organization. So large engineering companies where they use UAS as part of the company. So they're not branded as UAV company. This is just a tool they use. And so I'll give you an example on the ladder to tie the last 2 points together on non-business type revenues. The province of Saskatchewan has 1.3 million people, and you know, I don't know what that translates into European terms, but basically, given the size of the province, there's nobody there. Now, with all apologies to everybody in Saskatchewan, but in the Department of Environment, they have 50 UAS pilots, and they do an enormous range of valuable work, but it doesn't show up as revenue. So again, for those within governments and trying to assess economic outcomes, many of the outcomes do not have a direct economic relationship that we can determine, but it's significant. The world's largest user of UAVs is a single police force, is the RCMP, with 230 systems. Okay, I just want to spend one moment on vertical markets. With regard to the opportunities, I think, for Germany and Canada to work together, clearly, Canada is the #1 place in the world you come to if you want to build a mine. We have the engineering and the financial center of expertise in the world in Toronto. Agriculture, probably oil and gas. Those are the kind of vertical markets where I think the real opportunities are and the real revenues. And as I said, if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. So BVLOS is the critical way ahead. I think that's where the opportunities are, the revenues are. Tremendous amount of requirement to focus on artificial intelligence and data analytics that just came up. There's a nexus to the Montreal situation here and Toronto as well, where there's a tremendous depth of expertise in artificial intelligence. I just talked to a company the other day. They just finished doing a survey. They have 6 terabytes of data. Their servers are working around the clock, and it's going to take them 6 weeks to get the results to the customer, and the customer's not happy. Why does it take me 6 weeks to get the answers I'm looking for? And so we're trying, as we did our last conference, we're now connecting an artificial intelligence industry which doesn't know how to connect yet with this robotics industry that's out there, but we have perhaps solutions and the conversations can flow easily. Unmanned traffic management, Tristan just spoke to that. And then the integration of some new actors. So next slide, we're on the new players and dollars slide if, for Germany. Okay, so here's the message. If you live in the world of aerospace and you don't read magazines that deal with other markets, you're going to maybe miss this. But I've just put a bunch of bullets up there. I'm just going to focus on one because I'm time limited here. There's one I'd like to highlight there in Quebec City. There's a company here called LeddarTech. Canada happens to probably have the world leaders, generally speaking, in the LiDAR technology, which are big in for UAV applications. Perhaps the world leader in solid-state LiDARs is LeddarTech in Quebec City. A German company took out a major strategic equity position in that company just a few months ago. What I want to point to is they got a $130 million investment just a few weeks ago for that LiDAR technology. That money did not come, though, from the aerospace industry, or it came from the automotive, the automated vehicle sector. But the point is that that investment is going to translate directly into their UAV technology portfolios. So I think you will have a successful business going forward. But again, I wanted to point the German nexus to this, the automotive sector nexus, but direct implications in terms of what they do in world-leading technology for the UAV industry. But Uber, AT&T, Verizon, these are all the players now who are bringing big dollars, big innovation, and we need to understand this to have business success going forward. We'll talk about this, I think, later. Great infrastructure here in Canada to do now. Testing for OEMs, validate business and safety cases. These are massive areas of aerospace that are available, and certainly on European scales. We're talking about when you get inside the military test range that Michel Cordeau might refer to as part of the Alma test site. There's a whole lot of European countries you can put inside that test range, and they disappear in the size. And I'll note the climatic wind tunnel. It's amazing how many technologies are developed in parts of the world. They come to Canada and they simply cannot operate. Our climate doesn't make for that. Okay, next slide. I think that this is perhaps where the real opportunities are. Testing of these systems that need to have large space environmental challenges to operate beyond visual line of sight. I think that gives a parallel opportunity to work with the regulator on harmonization. This is a benefit to all of our industries where we can then actually leverage mechanisms like CETA because we have technical standards that are understood on both sides. Great opportunity for training here, I think. We talked about 2,300 commercial pilots, but if you really want to understand, if you know how to operate a system over long distances, maybe there's opportunities here. Unmanned traffic management. I think there's a lot of developments happening in Europe where that technology may have opportunities to be brought into Canada to experiment, demonstrate, perhaps foreign direct investment. And then certainly let's take a look at vertical markets with regard to what we can do with handling these masses of data using deep learning and these types of technologies that are evolving so rapidly. So this is a picture of our student competition we run annually. That's my final plug. This is our 10th year running it. Three times, I'll emphasize, Canadian team has gone to the United States where they run a global competition, and 3 times Canadian team has won that against the entire world. We do have the best and the brightest out there. These are brilliant students. We see them out in the industry. And so I just leave a plug. The future is extremely bright for us, and many of our academic colleagues are represented here both in Munich and Montreal. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mark. The future is bright. I very much like that sentence on cold November days where the sun is already setting here in Berlin and it's getting dark. So, questions in Berlin, questions in Montreal. Christina, just have a look around here. For the moment, no question here in Berlin.
Questions in Montreal? I don't see any hands, Alex. No? No hands, Alex.
No hands? Okay. Then there will be opportunity later. A last check here. Okay, now we continue. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mark. And we continue with the panel. Big applause.